chapters 1 through 21 of the Acts of Paul and Thecla, from the Apocryphal Acts of Paul, Peter, John, Andrew, and Thomas by Bernhard PICK. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. The Acts of Paul and Thecla, chapter 1. As Paul was going up to Iconium after his flight from Antioch, his fellow travelers were Demas and Hermogenes, the coppersmith, full of hypocrisy, and persisted in staying with Paul, as if they loved him. Paul, looking only to the goodness of Christ, did them no harm, but loved them exceedingly, so that he made sweet to them all the words of the Lord and the oracles of the gospel concerning the birth and resurrection of the beloved. And he gave them an account, word for word, of the great deeds of Christ, how they were revealed to him, that Christ is born of the Virgin Mary and of the seed of David. Chapter 2. And a certain man, by name Onesiphorus, hearing that Paul was come to Iconium, went out to meet him with his children Simeus and Zeno, and his wife Lectra, in order that he might entertain him. For Titus had informed him what Paul was like in appearance, for he had not seen him in the flesh, but only in the spirit. Chapter 3. And he went along the royal road to Lystra, and kept looking at the passers-by, according to the description of Titus. And he saw Paul coming, a man small in size, bald-headed, bandy-legged, of noble mien, with eyebrows meeting, rather long-nosed, full of grace. For sometimes he seemed like a man, and sometimes he had the countenance of an angel. Chapter 4. And Paul, seeing Onesiphorus, smiled. And Onesiphorus said, Hail, O servant of the blessed God! And he said, Grace be with thee and thy house. And Demas and Hermogenes were jealous, and showed greater hypocrisy, so that Demas said, Are we not of the blessed God, that thou hast not thus saluted us? And Onesiphorus said, I see not in you the fruit of righteousness, but if such you be, come also into my house, and refresh yourselves. Chapter 5. And Paul, having gone into the house of Onesiphorus, there was great joy and bending of knees and breaking of bread, and the word about self-control and the resurrection, Paul saying, Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are they that have kept the flesh chaste, for they shall become a temple of God. Blessed are they that control themselves, for God shall speak with them. Blessed are they that have kept aloof from this world, for they shall please God. Blessed are they that have wives, as not having them, for they shall receive God for their portion. Blessed are they that have the fear of God, for they shall become angels of God. Chapter 6. Blessed are they that tremble at the word of God, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are they that have received the wisdom of Jesus Christ, for they shall be called the sons of the Most High. Blessed are they that have kept the baptism, for they shall be refreshed by the Father and the Son. Blessed are they who have come to a knowledge of Christ, for they shall be in the light. Blessed are they that through love of God have come out from conformity with the world, for they shall judge angels, and shall be blessed at the right hand of the Father. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy, and shall not see the bitter day of judgment. Blessed are the bodies of the virgins, for they shall be well-pleasing to God, and shall not lose the reward of their chastity. For the word of the Father shall become to them a work of salvation against the day of the sun, and they shall rest for ever and ever. Chapter 7. And while Paul was thus speaking in the midst of the congregation in the house of Onesiphorus, a certain virgin named Thecla, the daughter of Theoclia, betrothed to a man named Thamyris, sitting at the window close by, listened day and night to the discourse of virginity and prayer, as proclaimed by Paul. And she did not look away from the window, but paid earnest heed to the faith, rejoicing exceedingly. But when she saw many women and virgins going in beside Paul, she also had an eager desire to be deemed worthy to hear the words of Christ. For she had not yet seen Paul's figure, but heard his word only. Chapter 8. As she did not move from the window, her mother sent to Thamyris, and he came gladly, as if already receiving her in marriage. And Thamyris said to Theoclia, Where then is my Thecla, that I may see her? And Theoclia answered, I have a strange story to tell thee, Thamyris. For 3 days and 3 nights Thecla does not rise from the window, neither to eat nor to drink, but looking earnestly as if upon some pleasant sight. She is devoted to a foreigner teaching deceitful and artful discourses. And I wonder how a virgin of her great modesty exposes herself to such painful vexations. Chapter 9. Thamyris, this man will overturn the city of the Iconians, and thy Thecla too, besides. For all the women and the young men go in beside him to be taught by him, who says one must fear only one God and live in chastity. Moreover also, my daughter, tied to the window like a spider, lays hold of what is said by him with a strange eagerness and awful emotion. For the virgin looks eagerly at what is said by him, and has been captivated. But do thou go near and speak to her, for she has been betrothed to thee. Chapter 10. And Thamyris, going near and kissing her, but at the same time also being afraid of her overpowering emotion, said, Thecla, my betrothed, why thus? And what sort of feeling holds thee overpowered? Come back to thy Thamyris, and be ashamed. Moreover also, her mother said the same things. Why dost thou sit thus, looking down, my child, and answering nothing, but like a madwoman? And they that were in the house wept bitterly, Thamyris for the loss of his wife, Theoclia of a child, and the maidservants of a mistress. And there was a great outpouring of lamentation in the house. And while these things were thus going on, Thecla did not turn around, but kept attending earnestly to the word of Paul. Chapter 11. And Thamyris, starting up, went forth into the street, and watched all going in to Paul and coming out. And he saw 2 men bitterly quarreling with each other, and he said to them, Men, who are you? And tell me who is among you, leading astray the souls of young men, and deceiving virgins, so that they do not marry, but remain as they are. I promise you money enough if you tell me about him, for I am the first man of this city. Chapter 12. And Demas and Hermogenes said to him, Who he is we know not, but he deprives the husbands of wives and maidens of husbands, saying, There is for you a resurrection in no other way, except ye remain chaste and pollute not the flesh. Chapter 13. And Thamyris said to them, Come into my house and refresh yourselves. And they went to a sumptuous supper, and much wine, and great wealth, and a splendid table. And Thamyris made them drink from his love to Thecla, and his wish to get her as a wife, on the day appointed by her mother Theoclia. And during the supper Thamyris said, Ye men, tell me, what is his teaching, that I also may know? For I am no little distressed about Thecla, because she thus loves the stranger, and I am prevented from marrying. Chapter 14. And Demas and Hermogenes said, as with one mouth, Bring him before the governor Castellius, because he persuades the multitude to embrace the new teaching of the Christians. And he will destroy him, and thou shalt have Thecla as thy wife. And we shall teach thee about the resurrection, that it has already taken place in the children. And we rise again, after having come to the true knowledge of God. Chapter 15. And when Thamyris heard these things, he rose up early in the morning, and filled with rage and anger, he went into the house of Onesiphorus, with archons and lectors, and a great crowd with batons, and said to Paul, Thou hast deceived the city of the Iconians, and especially my betrothed bride, so that she will not have me. Let us go to the governor Castellius. And the whole crowd cried, Away with the sorcerer, for he has misled all our wives. And the masses were also incited. Chapter 16. And Thamyris, standing before the tribunal, said with a great shout, O proconsul, this man, we know not whence he is, who makes virgins averse to marriage, let him say before thee why he teaches thus. But Demas and Hermogenes said to Thamyris, Say that he is a Christian, and he will die at once. But the proconsul stayed his intention, and called Paul, saying, Who art thou, and what dost thou teach? For they bring no small accusation against thee. Chapter 17. And Paul, lifting up his voice, said, If I today must tell any of my teachings, then listen, O proconsul. The living God, the God of vengeance, the jealous God, the God who has need of nothing, who seeks the salvation of men, has sent me that I may reclaim them from corruption and uncleanness, and from all pleasure, and from death, that they may sin no more. On this account God sent his Son, whose gospel I preach and teach, that in him men have hope, who alone has had compassion upon a world led astray, that men may be no longer under judgment, but may have faith and fear of God, and knowledge of honesty and love of truth. If therefore I teach what has been revealed to me by God, what wrong am I doing, O proconsul? When the proconsul heard this, he ordered Paul to be bound and sent to prison, until he had time to hear him more attentively. Chapter 18. And Thecla by night took off her bracelet and gave it to the gatekeeper, and the door being opened to her, she went into the prison. To the jailer she gave a silver mirror, and was thus enabled to go in beside Paul. And sitting at his feet, she heard the great deeds of God. And Paul was afraid of nothing, but trusted in God. And her faith also increased, and she kissed his bonds. Chapter 19. And when Thecla was missed by her friends and Thamyris, they were running up and down the streets, as if she had been lost. And one of the gatekeeper's fellow slaves informed them that she had gone out by night. And they examined the gatekeeper, who said to them, She has gone to the foreigner into the prison. And having gone, they found her, as it were, enchained by affection. And having gone forth thence, they incited the people, and informed the governor what had happened. 20. And he ordered Paul to be brought before the tribunal. But Thecla was wallowing on the place where Paul had sat whilst in prison. And the governor ordered her also to be brought to the tribunal. And she came with an exceedingly great joy. And when Paul had been led forth, the crowd vehemently cried out, "He is a sorcerer! Away with him!" But the proconsul gladly heard Paul upon the holy works of Christ. And having called a council, he summoned Thecla, and said, "Why dost thou not marry Thamyris, according to the law of the Iconians?" But she stood looking earnestly at Paul. And when she gave no answer, Theoclia, her mother, cried out, saying, "Burn the wicked one! Burn her in the midst of the theater who will not marry, that all the women that have been taught by this man may be afraid." 21. And the proconsul was greatly moved, and having scourged Paul, he cast him out of the city. But Thecla he condemned to be burned. And immediately the governor arose and went away to the theater, and the whole multitude went out to witness the spectacle. But as a lamb in the wilderness looks around for the shepherd, so Thecla kept searching for Paul. And having looked upon the crowd, she saw the Lord sitting in the likeness of Paul, and said, "As if I were unable to endure, Paul has come to look after me." And she gazed upon him with great earnestness. But he went up into heaven. End of chapters 1 through 21 of the Acts of Paul and Thecla.